Here's my feedback on the very interesting YouTube video, called The Killing Ground of Hougoumont. The video is on the YouTube channel of Waterloo Uncovered. Waterloo Uncovered is a registered UK charity. Through its world-class archaeology project, carried out on the battlefield of Waterloo, it pursues the support of veteran care and recovery. In the video, presented by Professor Pollard, extensive archaeology findings are revealed by the Waterloo Uncovered team, which came from data supplied through an on-the-ground survey in the chateau of Hougoumont's garden location. An overview describes the fierce fighting in this zone, referred to by some as the killing ground. This area was the scene of some of the bloodiest fighting at the Battle of Waterloo. Midway into the video, Mr. Pollard suggests a mystery is waiting to be solved regarding how some French bullets are found in the garden, when the British and German defenders were operating behind and protected by the 6 to 7 feet high loopholed wall of the garden. Using facts related to a combination of the battlefield topography and the account of a surviving British senior officer who participated in that battle zone's combat, we are provided with several concrete answers to solve the mystery. The question is asked, how the number of French musket balls found in the defenders' area, behind the high garden wall, could have gotten past the extensive 6 to 7 feet high, loopholed garden walls. The answer: the infantry combatants, on both sides of the wall, in and around certain parts of the garden area, were actually able to fire over it, at each other during the battle. It is important to note two actualities. First, regarding the Waterloo battleground, in 1815, the area's gentle slopes were somewhat more pronounced than seen today. Deep sunken roads existed, as did hillocks, and small ground hollows. Second, the chateau of Hougoumont sits in a land basin, in one of the lowest ground level areas on the battlefield. As such, the chateau and garden can be overlooked from the heights and slopes beyond. Even today, one can see the sloping effect in the chateau courtyard itself, where the lowest ground is around the north main gate, and the higher ground slopes up towards the southeast corner of the chateau. The sloping continues beyond the buildings on all sides. The woods to the south of the garden wall are on relatively low ground, while sloping up gently towards the east and south heights, where Count Reille's French Second Corps was deployed at the start of the battle. To the east of the garden wall, the chateau's fields and orchards are also on slightly higher sloping ground. In fact, the eastern edge of the formal garden was itself on higher ground than the western end, where the kitchen garden was situated, next to the south entrance, below the gardener's house of the complex. Let's take a look at evidence of the topography, first with maps of the period, showing the slopes around Hougoumont. The conclusive evidence, which is supported by the typography features of the location, comes from one important eyewitness, who was on the scene in the battle. His detailed written narration of the event can be found in a collection of after-action battle accounts, in the book, The Waterloo Letters, published in 1891, by Herbert Saborn. Herbert was the son of William Saborn, the famous Waterloo diorama creator, and the author of the 1844 epic and controversial two-volume book set, The History of the War in France and Belgium, in 1815. These unpublished letters were written by British and German officers who served in the Waterloo campaign, in the Duke of Wellington's army. They were used by William Siborne, the father, for his research on the Waterloo campaign. The witness we're using to solve this mystery is none other than Major Alexander Woodford, commander of the 2nd Battalion of the Coldstream Guards. In his 1838 letter to William Siborne, he describes how his famous battalion played its significant role in the successful defense of Hougoumont. Just after the battle started, at around noon, Major Woodford was ordered to lead his force of over 1,000 Coldstream Guards to reinforce the outnumbered British and German defenders, who, while in and around Hougoumont, were being overwhelmed by the first French attack, commanded by Napoleon's brother, Jerome. The Foot Guards had arrived just in time, chasing away a force of French infantry who had infiltrated the defences towards the chateau courtyard. Woodford adds further details about the horrors of the full day of close combat action in the chateau buildings and woods. Specifically relating to the solving of the garden mystery, here are the following quoted excerpts from his letter, related to what he witnessed. Particular attention is given to the French elite light infantry skirmishers, also known as tirailleurs. They had almost surrounded the hard-pressed garrison, which they sniped at all day long. Major Woodford wrote, in the following excerpts from his description. The tirailleurs on the rising ground along the eastern hedge never distinctly showed themselves, though they annoyed us very much by firing at the door, which communicated between the courtyard and the garden, and of which they could see the top. The little garden, to the south, fronting the wood, was occupied by the guards. There were platforms in it, and I do not recollect that the enemy ever got into it. The French never, as far as I recollect, got into the garden. They were in the orchard, but did not scale the garden walls. The platforms did not extend all the way, as in some cases, the bank was high enough to enable the men to fire over the walls. In conclusion, British and German troops, not directly behind the garden wall, were open targets for French snipers, who were hiding on higher ground, behind the hedgerow in front of the wood, and among the trees of the orchard and the woods. The few French bullets found inside the central garden area may suggest a lack of massed Allied troops as targets. The defenders tried to not linger in the open, and probably took cover by lying down, or sheltering among the garden's berceau frames, and fruit trees. According to Major Woodford, the manned garden wall on the east side was very strongly defended, and never breached. In Glover's concise Waterloo Archives collection, the Volume 2 book provides the observations of several surviving participants of the Hougoumont fighting. They described some of the trees in the orchard and woods around Hougoumont as being large elms and oak. There was hardly any undergrowth in the large spaces of ground between the big trees. This type of terrain would have allowed French skirmishers a wider field of fire to snipe at any defenders out in the open, in the garden area, and those who were targeted moving through the garden entrance. However, without undergrowth to provide camouflage or cover, the French troops also suffered heavy casualties during their attacks through the woods. The concentration of bullets, primarily at the southeast corner of the garden wall, confirms the accounts by veteran French light infantry and Allied defenders, who were in action at the gateway in between the thick hedgerows, that fierce close combat raged here, as the position switched hands throughout the day. Andrew Field's book, Waterloo, The French Perspective, provides recollections of Allied and French soldiers in action at this gateway. In those witness statements, we learn that the first heavy French attack against the orchard came from Colonel Tizot's 1st Brigade of the 2nd Corps 9th Division. When the assault overwhelmed the Nassau defenders and captured the hedgerow bordering the orchard at its south end, the French were observed then destroying much of the bushes. This served the double purpose of allowing better access for the supporting French infantry to move into the orchard, and denying a protective line for the Allied infantry if they subsequently counter-attacked. Marshal Ney made an appearance in this action, personally directing one of the 9th Division's reserve regiments to support Colonel Tizot's now badly battered brigade in the orchard and garden fight. In addition, when the French broke through into the orchard, many more French snipers had a protected firing line, while shooting at the nearby defenders of the southeast sector of the garden wall. Eventually, much of the heaviest fighting at Hougoumont was taking place in the orchard area. The French captured it several times, and the British 3rd Foot Guards retook it as many times. When the French did capture the orchard, and then probed north of the sunken road and ditches, Wellington was obliged to send several infantry brigades, in succession, to this hollow ground area, to prevent any French breakthrough against his right flank. In effect, the diversionary attack of the French Second Corps did in fact pull Allied reserves in large numbers, to protect the dangerous threat coming from the orchard. The brigades of Adam, Duplat, Hugh Halkett, and 3 Brunswick battalions, and some light cavalry, were all deployed in whole or in part, to protect the hollow ground, linking Hougoumont to the west end of Mont Saint-Chun Hill. The epic garden sector defense of the elements of the 2nd and 3rd British Foot Guards regiments, and the Nassau Battalion, defied the furious French onslaught, and played a key role, in preventing Napoleon from overwhelming and turning Wellington's vulnerable right flank.